Welcome to the Ministry Pivot Podcast with Russell St. Bernard, a podcast designed to assist leaders as they seize the season of opportunity by pivoting toward it. Let's get started with today's episode.
Thanks for joining Ministry Pivot. Reverend Russ back again. Super excited about the opportunity that we have to do these pivots in this way. Excited about today's pivot. Before we get into that, don't forget to go online to ministrypivot.com. Don't forget to follow us on all social media assets. Follow me as well. Don't forget to check out all of our articles, to check out all of our previous pivots. Most importantly, don't forget to like, to follow, to share. That's how this channel gets pushed up. And of course, don't forget about Pivot University coming in the fall. Super excited about that as well. And don't forget, if you are looking to be coached in your pivot, to be coached in what you're doing, you can also contact us there on ministrypivot.com. Just click the button that says coach. Super excited today. I have with me Reverend Lisa Fields, Sister Lisa Fields. She told me about calling her that, but super excited about the work that she's doing. She is an awesome scholar. She is an awesome theologian. She is an awesome just follower of Christ, but also co-laborer. Has some great work that she's doing with Jude 3, also with a new book. But I'm going to stop talking so we can go into the conversation now with Lisa Fields. Reverend Lisa, thank you so much for getting on to Ministry Pivot on today. Super excited to have you on Ministry Pivot, and thankful that you took the time to spend some time with us on the platform today.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Russell. It's a joy.
Amen. I'm super excited. We met a little while ago, but before we met a little while ago at our TKN conference here at Kingdom Fellowship. I'm actually in the church today. Big shout out, Pastor Watley. Super thankful for his leadership and allowance of us to do all of the things that we do here as staff. But we met at the TKN conference where you came and you shared about your upcoming book. And but before we jump into that, I gave a little bit of background of who Lisa Fields is, but I know I did not do it justice. So can you please share just a little bit more about kind of how God is forming you, kind of your background, and kind of how we got to this moment, if you will, please.
Yeah, so Lisa Fields, originally from Jacksonville, Florida, born and raised in church. My father's a pastor, so I've been in church my whole life. And so I never really questioned my faith until I got to college. And it was in college where I took a New Testament class where I didn't realize that New Testament and at a regular university was going to be different than church, Sunday school. And I really struggled with like why I believe what I believe. And that's when my dad introduced me to apologetics. And so as I'm getting immersed, understanding apologetics, I didn't see people like me leading it. All the prominent apologists were mostly older white men. And I was like, we need something to fill the gap for our community because while this is helpful, there are some ways this can be contextualized for us to answer our questions a little bit better and to understand like Black church experience within that. And so that really cultivated a desire for me to go into apologetics. I would graduate and go into banking. But then I felt the Lord leading me to go off to seminary in 2012. And then in 2014, I started the Jude 3 project, really started as a passion project, not knowing God would do all of this with it. But we really just started basically as a gathering for local pastors and leaders to help equip them in apologetics. And then it's kind of grown to what it is today.
Yeah, and let me say, so you said a lot, and she ran through a lot of it. So let me try to slow the train a little bit. Apologetics and doing the work of apologetics in the African American context is super important. I'm going to make a comment, but then I'd love for you to expound a little bit. So I'm from Brooklyn, New York. I got saved my last year at Morgan State University. I threw parties for the first 4 years. The Lord called me on my 5th year. It was like, yo, I need you to do something different. Hence Ministry Pivot and all of the things that I've been able to be a part of. But I remember when I first understood the Lord's calling, everyone outside of the main preachers, all of the text, all of the contextual work, when I would Google who they were, did not look like me.
Mhm.
I was thankful to be able to then go to get my MDiv from Howard Divinity at that time, and now Howard is still really good, but at that time it was just an eye opening experience, and
Mhm.
I think it solidifies the need for African American scholarship when it comes
Mhm.
to biblical truths. Now I made that comment. I would love for you to share some around what that looks like in the apologetics field. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. I think representation is very, very important because you get this idea if you don't see people looking like you that this isn't a discipline for us or this is something we have thought rigorously about. And so there were people doing it, but they just didn't have the platform or the money that those older white gentlemen had. So it's not that it didn't exist, they didn't have the exposure. And so I'm really thankful just that God created that passion in me. That's why I'm so passionate about platforming other scholars and leaders because I understood when I started Jude 3 Project, it couldn't just be me. We needed other faces, other people to speak into this because I have a limited amount of experience, a limited amount of knowledge, but there are other people who have expertise that surpass me that need to be elevated. And so if I have a platform, is the platform is not only for me, but it's for others, for people to see that Black people are brilliant. They have answers to the questions that culture is raising.
No, I think that's great and super phenomenal. And let me ask now then, can you explain to us about Jude 3? So I remember, I think the first Jude 3 piece of content I saw, I don't think it was with the conference. I think it was you sat with a group of young adults who like said, and this is Reverend Russ's term, like forget the church. And you was like, yo,
Mhm.
so why? And you like sat a camera and it was super dope. I was like, yo, this is brilliant. Like, this is great because we're looking at the other side. And my thing used to always be when I did youth ministry, books on it and stuff, was it's not youth ministry unless the youth are running the ministry. But my
Mhm.
tension was, Lisa, that there was so many youth ministries that were creating carbon copies of the youth pastor or pastor. And the kids
Mhm.
that we really needed were some of the ones you had around that table. So let me
Mhm.
again, I'm fanning here for a minute, but let me pause and ask you to share with us what is Jude 3, right? And kind of the reason you gave some of the reason behind it, but if you can expand a little bit more about that, please.
Yeah, so Jude 3 has evolved over the years. We started just as a website. When I first started it, evolved into that event I was telling you about that we had July 12th, 2014. But it has evolved into a multimedia nonprofit that helps people reimagine faith using the tool of apologetics. And we do that through a number of ways through our conferences or in person experiences, through our multimedia, whether it's documentaries. We've done two, one Juneteenth, Faith and Freedom, that's on PBS, and Unspoken, that's on Tubi. We have those videos and conversations that you talked about where I sat down with young adults who left the faith. I've sat down with teens and asked them what they want to hear or their questions for pastors and their questions for God. We have done also in-person experiences like our HBCU tour, where we have these in-person forums at HBCUs around the question, is Christianity a white man's religion? So to answer your question, a Jude 3 is an ever evolving multimedia apologetics nonprofit that really gets at the heart of the questions at the core that Black skeptics are asking. So it equips Black Christians, but engages Black skeptics.
And I think that is phenomenal. There used to be a site, it may still be out now, when I was early on trying to encourage people around the faith, encourage people around like answers. I'm rereading, I just finished reading the latest book on King, that is
Mhm.
super phenomenal. And it made me reread Malcolm X. And one of the things, I'm from Brooklyn, so bean pies I know, oils I know. And one of the things used to always be, how are you Christian believing in that white Jesus? And I
Mhm.
remember having the dialogue, but not having the tools of the dialogue. Now I'm jumping off base.
Mhm.
Let me go back. My point that I want to make though is I want you to help us understand that Jude 3 has a broad impact now, a broad footprint. Let me say it that way.
Mhm.
And it's ever reaching more. But can you talk a little bit about the docu series that you have? You mentioned both of them, but just talk a little bit about the docu series themselves and the why. We're going to put it for those of you who are watching, who are listening. Thank you. We're going to put it in the show notes. Big shout out Brianna in the background working the notes for us. But we're going to put it in the show notes here. But can you give us a little bit about the docu series? I thought that was a really one powerful series itself, but just a
Mhm.
really cool idea as a way to engage the faith, and as you said it, the skeptics of the faith, because it wasn't
Mhm.
necessarily all for us. It was good for those who know the Lord and love the Lord, but it was also good for those who had questions, which we all should anyway. But can you give us a little bit more about the documentary, please?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we did a HBCU tour, with the answering the question, "Is Christianity white man's religion?" And when we used to ask students, that say Christianity is white man's religion, where did you get that from? They would point to a YouTube video, they would point to Instagram videos. And so it wasn't like they were reading a book and having this reevaluation. It was some piece of multimedia that was transforming
Mhm.
their thinking. And so we're like, if people are getting deconverted through media, maybe they can re-engage through media. And so that was the idea behind it, meeting people where they are. How are they getting information? They might not read a book, apologetics book, on how to respond to this idea that Christianity is white man's religion, but they may sit down and watch a documentary. And
Mhm.
so that was the goal behind it, to respond to the claim, is Christianity white man's religion, in a form in which people were consuming information.
Okay.
And we felt like that was the most effective way. And we do that really in different ways. We talk about Christianity, the Black presence in the Bible, early African Christianity. We talk about Christianity and slavery, and Christianity, the Black contributions in the US. And really, that was a framework we had that we walked through when we were with students on campus. So we just basically put that on display through a documentary, taking them through the Black experience with faith. And so that was the goal behind Unspoken. And now we are thankful that it's on Tubi, which is a ever-growing streaming platform that allows, because when we first released it, you had to pay. But when we partnered with Tubi for distribution, it allowed for people, Christians will pay for it, but skeptics who really need to see this are not, maybe won't pay for it.
Mhm.
Um, but if it's on Tubi and it's free, they're more prone to check it out. And so we're thankful that it's picked up a lot of steam on Tubi, and we think we're reaching our target audience through this medium. The other one is Juneteenth Faith and Freedom, which really was a project we did in collaboration with Our Daily Bread. And they approached us some years back about doing something. We have a long-standing partnership with them. They approached us about doing stuff for Juneteenth, and they were like, Our Daily Bread is known for the booklets, and so they were like, "Well, we want to do a booklet about Juneteenth. Will you partner with us?" And I was like, "I don't think that's going to be effective. Why don't we do a film?" And
Right.
I just pitched it, not really thinking too much about it, and they took me seriously. Um, Created the budget for it, and we produced the film together. And so those are how those came about. It was Juneteenth becoming a national holiday, and actually wanting to connect to the faith component that we don't think often gets highlighted in Juneteenth.
Mhm.
And so that was the kind of the thought behind Juneteenth Faith and Freedom. And last year, PBS picked it up, and it aired on PBS, and it re-aired on PBS this year. And so we're thankful for what the Lord has done with these two projects.
Amen. And again, phenomenal work to you and the team. I know there's a team driving behind you. Now, I've got to be, so I want to back up, and then I'm going to jump to the book. But I got to back up because I got to be honest and true to the ministry pivot, because you said something, and I said I was going to get back to it, but I got so excited about apologetics that I left it alone. But this wasn't the first field. You said you were in banking before you jumped to this. How did that
Yes.
pivot? So ministry pivot is that God will call you in the midst. He won't slow you. He'll just
Mhm.
pivot you. I would love for you to share how you made that pivot, or how the Lord helped you make that pivot?
Yeah. So since I was in the fifth grade, we played the magnet. I was in the magnet program and we played the stock market game. I wanted to be a stockbroker. So I would tell everybody, they were like, what do you want to be when you grow up? I had no ministry ambitions. I was like, I'm gonna be a stockbroker, move to New York City and work on Wall Street. And so when I first started college, that was my goal. I was an investment finance major. And that was what I was gonna do. I was gonna work on Wall Street. And so I ended up, because of that experience, I pivoted when I had that class to public relations, communications, and religious studies. So that was the first pivot. And then when I graduated from college, I had student loan debt and I needed a job. So the first job I got was in banking. So I worked for Bank of America for a year and then Merrill Lynch in mutual funds for a year because Bank of America had acquired Merrill. And so the pivot for me was I felt the Lord leading me in my second year working in the financial sector to quit my job and move to Virginia to start seminary. And so I had to trust God and quit my good job without knowing the details. This is before I even knew I was going to start Jude 3. So this was in 2012. Jude 3 didn't come about till 2014. God hadn't even given me the name or vision or anything. I just knew that the only thing I needed to do was quit my job and move. And that was the pivot that changed my life, because I think about if I had have stayed there, none of this would exist.
Yeah.
But I had to trust God without knowing the details and basically jump without a parachute. And by the time I jumped, the parachute was on my back. And I don't know how I got there, but the grace of God. So
That is awesome. That is awesome, and that is always encouraging. Get people over and over again say, "Man, I wasn't looking for this. I wasn't trying to find this. The Lord found it, and I had to trust. And then before I knew it, I was in." So that is super phenomenal, and we thank God for your move of faith. Now, let me ask about the book. Right. So we talked a little bit about, well, apologetics. We talked about Jude 3. We talked about your pivot. We talked about, but now you have this book that's coming out. We're recording currently in the end of June. This will come out in a couple weeks, but your book is forthcoming. Can you tell us about when faith disappoints? Why when faith
yeah,
disappoints? And then
yeah,
there you
yeah.
go. And then tell us about it, please.
So I've been sitting, as you talked about. I've had conversations with young adults who left the faith because of the nature of work. I feel like I'm quality control for some people when they do their exit interviews with me when they leave the faith. People want to talk to me about why they leaving, and I'm
Wow.
listening to people. And apologetics really is a discipline about logic and reason. But I like to think of apologetics in two ways. And that it comes really from Erwin Cantor's book in Popular Encyclopedia for Apologetics, that apologetics is informational and incarnational. It is
Mm.
the information we disseminate when we're answering people's questions, but it is also incarnational. It's embodying the message that we believe. Um, and so with that, as I thought through how to write this book, I wanted it to be both. It is information about why we have the hope that we have, but it is incarnational. It is I'm sitting with them. I'm embodying the message by going through very personal struggles with them and
Mm.
things that you wouldn't know because I'm a private person. But I felt like it needed to be vulnerable and informational for our culture today. And as I listen to people and their struggles with faith, I really identified pain points. And I talk about in the book 7 pain points. And I'll share a little bit with you now. Like, one is the biggest one when we talk about African American community is personhood. Who am I? And so it is really saying, okay, your question about is Christianity a white man's religion? It's also an identity question, right? And so let's not just argue about Black identity, or faith and race. let's have a deeper conversation about, do you think you're valuable? Do you know who you are? And so it's really about getting to the questions underneath the questions and speaking to the pain that we all experience. We all experience disappointment. Pain is universal. So whether you lack identity, personhood, whether you lack peace, whether you're feeling powerless, I want to speak to all of those pain points, because I believe if I can speak to the root, then it will really have more of an impact than just arguing with you about the faith decisions that you've made. Um, and that really comes really from several conversations. I remember one in particular. We were at Southern University, and there was a guy who was a Hebrew Israelite, and they come to all of our HBCU stops, and they kind of antagonize, and it got kind of frustrating, you know. But I
Yeah.
remember that was one of the times where I had to think, like, I need to pivot the way I think about this, because he was at the mic getting frustrated, and then his friend stormed off, because they come really in a group, and so one was a reader and one was just the one
Mhm.
articulating his questions and his thoughts. And the one that was articulating stormed off, and the guy who was the reader, he just looked at us and he said, "Why are my people dying like this?" And he, like, his eyes well up with tears. And that was the first time I moved from seeing them as antagonists to just somebody wrestling with the problem of evil, wrestling with identity. And it was like, okay,
Good.
what if I just, like, let's just put our weapons down, our arguments down for a second. How are you feeling? Like, when did you first started feeling like this? Like,
That's
what
good.
what is what does this make you feel about yourself? And I think that the book is really a different approach to apologetics. When I did an interview a couple weeks ago with Christianity Today, and they were like, "We've never seen an apologetics book that's vulnerable." But I said I needed to be vulnerable, because I feel like that's the only way we're going to make an impact on this generation.
Yeah, I think that's phenomenal, and I think I can't wait to grab my copy as well, and to share it. And then I can't wait for you to come. You're coming back to TKN this year, so I can't wait to engage around that too. But I think I've had what you said. Let me just articulate it. What you said, I think, hit me in a real core place, because it's seeing them not as, you didn't use this word, I'm using it, not as the enemy, but seeing them as people, the Hebrew Israelites.
Mhm.
Because again, Brooklyn, I've had the arguments, I've been on the soap. I remember, shout out Pastor Bryant, I used to serve with him in Empowerment Temple. They used to come at the end of church just to be outside, and I am the one that, like, I'll go. Let me have the conversation. Like, I want to go. And but I didn't have that frame. I had the frame of
Mhm.
trying to win, not the frame of trying to understand. And I think that's
Mhm.
that's super key, because the truth is, the gospel is relational, and it's
Mhm.
all relationship. And so if you
Mhm.
come at it at the wrong way, it's never really gonna make sense. So I love that part of it. Anything else from the book? You gave us one, and I want them to get the book. So it's seven. Just give me one more thought, and then after that, we're not going to do it, because they got to buy the book themselves and get it for themselves.
Yeah. We talk about purpose in the book, because I think, in our culture, purpose is the buzzword. Purpose driven life. Everybody has a book on purpose. But I think it's been westernized, mixed with uh, capitalization, uh, where we think, like, if our name is not in lights, that we don't have a million followers, then we miss purpose.
Hmm.
And so I really
Yeah.
talk about purpose is not what you achieve, it's who you become. That every season of
Hmm.
life, may give you a different thing to do, a different assignment. I might not be doing you 10 years from now. God may call me to something different, but it's God is forming me to be more like Him, and that is the
Yeah.
goal, to be formed in His image. That is the purpose. And if I'm looking for something just to happen outside of me, or me to achieve something, that's going to leave me very empty in the end. And so it's really shifting people's minds, because I discovered just in conversation that people are looking for purpose to make sense of their own pain. And so if they've experienced something traumatic, they feel like, well, I have to have this grand purpose to balance that out. I have to do
Yeah.
something to make my pain make sense. And so I'm kind of helping them navigate that, and you'll see more details in the book of how do we talk about purpose in a way that doesn't actually do more harm to us and create depression, but actually is more productive.
Wow. No, that's great. That's great. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to the dialogue that will happen around it once it's fully out for everybody to have. Lisa, I want to ask you just one question. Um, if somebody's been listening to us for the last 4 minutes or so, and they are excited or still questioning apologetics, what's one word that you would what's one thought that you would give them? Excited about it or questioning it? The whole thought on apologetics.
I believe apologetics really is a healing discipline because it gives us the freedom to question. And even to know God more, we need to ask him questions. When you meet anyone, the first thing you do is question them. Like, you want to know everything about them. You grow in relationship with questions, and our relationship with God is no different than that. And so apologetics is a discipline that gives you the ability to ask God questions, which is how you cultivate a deeper relationship with God.
That is great. That is great. That is great. Thank you again for getting on Ministry Pivot. How can we now? Again, we're going to put everything we have in the show notes, your website, your socials. But if there's something specific on how we can be in contact with Lisa, we can be praying for Lisa in Jude 3. Please let us know so we can do so. Let the people know now how we can get in contact, how we can be praying for all of those things.
Yeah, I'm on socials as Lisa V Feels. On all social platforms, and Jude 3 Project on all social platforms. Get When Faith Disappoints wherever books are sold on August 13th. And you can be praying for us as our conference is coming up, Courageous Conversations in DC, the August 29th through the 31st. And so this is our 10-year anniversary. So be praying for conference and the book, and register for the conference at courageousconvos.org.
Amen.
Thank you so
Amen.
much.
Super excited. Of course. Thank you. Thank you for taking the time. I really mean that. Super excited for you carving time out for us, and excited about those who are watching, who are listening. I can't wait to hear how you are courageous in your conversations, but how you are representing the faith. Thanks again, Lisa, for getting on today.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, I hope you were as excited as I was to hear and to glean from Lisa Fields. She is doing a tremendous work. Don't forget about the Jude 3 conference. Don't forget about the Conversations conference. Don't forget about her book coming out soon in the next couple of weeks. Super excited about all that she has going on, and excited about the work that she's doing for the kingdom, and excited about the fruit and the impact that work will have. Of course, don't forget to like, comment, follow, and subscribe here at Ministry Pivot. And of course, don't forget about Pivot University. Look forward to seeing you, and look forward to seeing you as you move forward, because this is your season of opportunity. All you have to do is pivot toward it. God bless.
That's it for today's episode of the Ministry Pivot. We hope you enjoyed listening and gaining some valuable insight. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform so you never miss out on our future episodes. And if today's show has resonated with you, please leave us a review to help others discover our podcast. For more resources and updates, visit our website at ministrypivot.com. And be sure to join our email list, as well as follow us on Instagram at Ministry Pivot. Thanks for joining us today, and we're excited to have you back next time for another insightful episode of Ministry Pivot. Stay connected, keep pivoting. We'll see you soon.